So to discuss the significance of Nuclear Security Summit, we are joined by Commodore Uday Bhaskar, Director, Society for Policy Studies and Strategic Affairs Analyst. Welcome, Commodore Bhaskar, to Newsnight. How serious is the threat of nuclear terrorism coming as this summit does? Weeks after the Brussels terror attack and in the wake of reports in the Belgian media that one of the suicide bombers who had died in the Brussels attack had actually surveyed the movements and tracked down the movements of one of the top nuclear research and development officials of Belgium, which gives the possibility really of an attack being planned on a nuclear facility in Belgium.
I would say that the current assessment of nuclear terrorism by one means or the other, in the wake of both Brussels and before Brussels, I think we also have to add Lahore, meaning the way in which Pakistan is now seized by this fervor of the non-state entities and the kind of ideology they bring to the table, has in a way increased the probability. Therefore, if you look at the mood in this particular summit in Washington, D.C., the number one item as far as all the global leaders are concerned is, and I think the way in which the US President Mr. Obama phrased it, that the most dangerous groups in the world should not be allowed to access the most dangerous weapons or material that the world has produced. And my sense is that Prime Minister Modi, when he participates in the deliberations, would also draw attention to something that he has been saying consistently since he has addressed global fora, whether it's in the UN or elsewhere, that there needs to be a certain political consensus about how to deal with the scourge of terror, and in this particular case to focus on how do we prevent these groups from accessing any kind of radioactive material, whether it's fissile material that would allow the equivalent of a dirty bomb, or the worst case scenario is actually being able to access nuclear explosives, which I would say is the lesser probability. But these are exigencies which are being taken very seriously by professionals, and as you pointed out, in many ways Brussels is an alert because Belgium has just 2 civilian nuclear plants, and in one of them they had found that 2 or 3 of the employees had actually gone to Syria in 2012-13 and participated in the violence and the struggle there.
So that's about, Commodore Bhaskar, the threat of nuclear terrorism. But India has its own security concerns with regard to its neighborhood. Pakistan has had a very disturbing past with regard to clandestinely sharing nuclear secrets with Libya, with North Korea, with Iran. And then even Russia is not attending the Nuclear Security Summit. How big a setback is the absence of Russia there? And how big a concern is Pakistan's past as far as nuclear security is concerned?
Well, the second part first. I think the absence of Russia is a major gap, because much of the global nuclear discourse and the global nuclear regulation is shared between Washington and Moscow, because they have the largest nuclear weapon arsenals.
90% of the global nuclear warheads are shared
between these two countries.
US and Russia.
Russia's absence is a big, I would say, gap in the summit. But that has more to do with the politics between Russia and the United States, particularly over Syria and other matters. As far as we are concerned, I think India's abiding concern is that Pakistan has acquired nuclear weapons with support from China. This goes back to May of 1990. Subsequently, Pakistan has engaged in fairly robust proliferation activities, which are symbolized by what is called as the AQ Khan network, the Walmart as it was referred to. And Pakistan has used its nuclear weapon capability to create more space to engage in terrorism, what in the jargon we refer to as nuclear weapon enabled terror. And why I brought Lahore up, it's very tragic that women and children were killed in Lahore, but concurrently, if you saw the mood in that city over the assassination of the former governor of Punjab, Salman Taseer, and the punishment that was meted out to the assassin, Qadri, I think that to me is the greatest anxiety, that today this kind of a fervor could well have entered the Pakistani security establishment. So I think what perhaps is not being articulated, and this to me is the
There's
subtext.
an insider threat, is what you're referring to in Pakistan.
That could be a very serious issue for the global community.
Okay. Now, we know that a nuclear deal has been sealed up with Iran, which world powers have finally managed with the leadership of United States. But North Korea is very much an outlier. How big a threat to a nuclear security regime is North Korea today, and how can that be tackled?
North Korea is a very, very serious, and I would say it's becoming increasingly intractable. Just on the eve of the summit, North Korea released a video which they called as Last Chance. And that has a very graphic image of a submarine-launched ballistic missile attacking Washington, D.C. Now, of course, everyone says this is propaganda. But I think at the end of the day, the fact that North Korea has weapons of mass destruction capability, WMD capability, some people refer to North Korea as a Pluto nuclear power, meaning that it is very diminutive. But yet, it can radically alter the geopolitics of East Asia, where you have the interests not only of the two Koreas, South Korea and North Korea, but Japan, China, and Russia, and the overhang is that of the United States. So this is a very, very tense situation that has developed over the last few months. And I think it will challenge the perspicacity of the three major powers, that is United States, Russia, and China. Paradoxically, in as much as China has supported Pakistan, it also is seen as the most robust partner of North Korea. So having enabled these states to get this kind of a capability, the onus is back on these powers to see how they can make the world more stable. So in short, North Korea is a very complex strategic dilemma for the global powers, and I'm sure that in the course of the deliberations in Washington, D.C., this would also come up for scrutiny.
Okay.
The dilemma of North Korea and that of Pakistan, which again, interestingly, was
Pakistan
referred to
is being
by...
represented, but not by Nawaz Sharif.
But
there.
Mr. Donald Trump referred to Pakistan as a very serious issue, meaning that today I think the United States and the establishment there is seeing Pakistan as a very serious challenge. And my sense is that Prime Minister Modi would also share India's concerns about this when they have the closed-door deliberations.
Now, Barack Obama has written an op-ed piece in Washington Post where he talks about his vision, which he's articulated before, of making the world free of nuclear weapons. There was this New START treaty that was signed between the US and Russia, and there is a target of reducing the deployment of nuclear weapons to a great degree by 2018. The question is that do you think that this is a realistic possibility, maybe in the lifetime of Obama or
Munmun,
later?
I wish I could say that there was any hint of a possibility. Frankly, global nuclear zero is highly desirable, but it's a holy grail. It's very elusive. I do not see it happening, at least in my lifetime. As far as President Obama and the vision that he has outlined, it is commendable, but I must also draw attention to the doublespeak, meaning that in as much as President Obama made that famous speech in Prague, and in the Washington Post article he spoke about a nuclear zero, the reality is that both the United States and Russia are refining their nuclear capability. They are investing vast sums of money to acquire more technologically capable weapons than what we had seen in the Cold War. And what that points to is that the nuclear weapon is still relevant in the security doctrine of the world's two largest nuclear weapon powers, that is the United States and Russia. So the logic is that if they feel that their security cannot be guaranteed except with highly advanced nuclear weapons, how do you expect the rest of the world, whether it's a North Korea or any of the other countries,
You have to lead by example, and you can't keep indulging in doublespeak.
So I think this doublespeak is something that I hope the global leadership will also note and try and square the circle. It won't be easy, but today I would say that the global nuclear threat, whether from fissile material, dirty bombs, or from the kind of nuclear weapons that are being nurtured by the major powers, is cause for very serious concern. And if nothing, the summit in DC would draw attention to this.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Commodore Uday Bhaskar, for having joined us on Newsnight tonight and for discussing with us the significance of the Nuclear Security Summit.